Erik and Lyle Menendez, the infamous brothers. The savagery of their crime, the murders of both their mother and father, seem beyond comprehension. Tonight, for the very first time out of court, you will hear their story. Tonight, watching our interview, you can reach your own verdict about them. We begin with the crime itself. A hot August night in 1989, the Beverly Hills mansion of entertainment executive Jose Menendez. He and his wife Kitty are watching television in the family room. Suddenly, a brutal volley of shotgun fire. Jose Menendez is killed by a close-in shot to the head. He has 5 other shotgun wounds. Kitty Menendez's body is riddled with shotgun pellets.
She had 10 wounds on her. She was getting blasted all over that room.
Don't kill my parents.
Pardon me?
Don't kill my parents.
Were they shot?
Yes.
They were shot?
Yes.
The voice of Lyle Menendez, then 21 years old, who tells police that he and his brother Erik, then 18, discovered the bodies as they returned home from a movie. Lyle and Erik Menendez lied successfully for months. But if their crime was a horror movie, their undoing was the stuff of soap opera. Erik, in torment, confessed his crime to his therapist, Dr. Jerome Oziel. Lyle then also admitted to the murders. Their confession was overheard by Oziel's mistress, Judalon Smith, and she went to the police. Lyle was arrested in California. Erik, who had been traveling overseas, voluntarily flew home to surrender. 3 years later, the Menendez brothers went on trial for their lives.
I was just firing as I went into the room. I just started firing.
In what direction?
In front of me.
What was in front of you?
My parents.
And I remember firing directly at him.
You reloaded? Is that yes?
Yes.
And what did you do after you reloaded?
I ran around and shot my mom.
This is the woman who gave birth to them. This is what they did to their mother.
The jury heard tapes of the brothers' confession to Dr. Oziel. When their turn came, Erik and Lyle Menendez told a rapt courtroom that the murder of their parents was an act of self-defense. They said they were in fear of their lives from a controlling father who had been sexually abusing them.
He raped me.
Did you cry?
Yes.
Did you bleed?
Yes.
Were you scared?
Very.
Lyle said his abuse stopped when he was 8, but that he didn't know until just before the murders that Erik was being molested too.
What do you believe was the originating cause of you and your brother ultimately winding up shooting your parents?
Me telling.
You telling what?
Me telling Lyle that,
You telling Lyle what? Was it you telling Lyle about something that was happening?
My dad had been molesting me.
The brothers' testimony was compelling and effective. Relatives testified on their behalf about incidents in which their father treated the sons harshly, though none of them could actually confirm the allegations of sexual abuse. The jurors could not decide between verdicts of murder and manslaughter.
I find that the jury is hopelessly deadlocked, and the court declares a mistrial.
In August of 1995, now 6 years after their parents' murders, the Menendez brothers went on trial again. This time, there were no video cameras. Erik testified, but Lyle chose not to. Judge Stanley Weisberg again presided, but in a major blow for them, limited the brothers' claims to self-defense. There were far fewer grounds this time for a possible verdict of manslaughter. The jury deliberated for less than 4 days. The verdict? Lyle and Erik Menendez, both guilty of first-degree murder. The jury spent 3 more days deciding between life and death. The verdict here was life, in prison with no parole. The Menendez brothers have spent more than 6 years in this building, the Los Angeles County Jail. Erik lives in the identical cell next to this one. It measures 7.5 by 9 feet. Lyle's cell, in another wing of the jail, is slightly smaller. Both brothers are segregated from the general population. Each of the brothers separately is allowed up to 3 hours of exercise a week on the jail's roof. Erik and Lyle Menendez will be moved to state prison, perhaps even to separate prisons, this summer. Our interview took place in the jail's administrative wing, some distance from their cells. You may find Erik and Lyle Menendez to be cunning and manipulative, as their second jury seems to have, pronouncing them guilty of first-degree murder. Or, like many of the jurors at their first trial, you may decide that they are credible and that their story strikes a sympathetic chord. That is perhaps for you to determine. My job was to ask the questions, beginning with this one. What went through your minds when you heard that verdict? First-degree murder, guilty.
That I was going to spend the rest of my life in prison without any possibility of ever getting released. And you're devastated. I was devastated.
Could have been death. Did you think that?
I was terrified that they would give either one of us death, and it's scary.
It's important to you to stay together when you get moved to the state prison?
Very important. That is what's gotten us through these 6 years and through our life. The family that Erik and I grew up in, we had to be there for each other throughout, and it really created a bond that gets us through very rough periods.
Some people might say, why should we put them together? I mean, look what they did. They should be punished as much as possible. Let's separate them. What do you say to that? You know people will say that, some.
There's nothing to say to that. What we did, it was awful, and I wish I could go back. We will spend the rest of our life in prison. But if we're not put in the same prison, there's a good probability I will never see him again. And that some things that you cannot take, and there's some things that you can endure. With everything taken away, it would be the last, it's the last thing you can take.
Do you think the media has portrayed you fairly? Can you tell?
I don't know if anyone can be portrayed fairly in the media, who they are.
Well, let me say it. There are people, a great number of people, who think that you two are spoiled brats, that you are evil, that you are monsters. What do you say to them?
That's not who I am, but I can't defend that. Because I came from a family of wealth, it doesn't make me spoiled.
I would be surprised if anybody that was present at that trial and saw the whole thing rather than snippets on the news would feel that.
A jury found you both guilty.
Right, but I don't think you aren't guilty because they found you spoiled.
Or evil.
Or evil.
Just a normal, I'm just a normal kid.
Oh, Erik, you're a normal kid who killed your parents.
Yeah, I know.
And you still say you're a normal kid?
Well, I didn't have normal experiences, but I am. I did that, and there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about what happened and wish that I could take that moment back or change what happened. But it's hard to live with that.
Do you feel remorse?
Tremendous remorse. And I think...
There's tremendous pain. I mean, from the second that I got back to the house after the shootings, I saw what happened and I said, this is wrong. This is awful. How could this have happened? I couldn't accept it.
You couldn't accept it, but you called the police. You pretended that you hadn't done it. You cried? You went off on a spending spree? I mean, we all read about it. You bought Rolexes, you bought cars, you didn't say, oh my God, what have I done, and turn yourself in.
Well, that's not really what happened.
Well, I've sort of stuck it all together, but...
Yeah, you did a good job at it. We got back to the house, the police were there, and it was a matter of telling him you did it, or just saying, I don't know who did it. And that's what we did. And if I could go back, perhaps I'd say I did it.
And part of that started from the fact that we waited afterwards, and the police did not come. And in that time that we waited and waited, you know, we did make a bad decision to not have to...
We expected the police to be there. I mean...
You expected the police to come there and arrest you?
12 shots in the middle of Beverly Hills on a Sunday night, and no one calls the police. We're waiting at the house. No one shows up. And I still can't believe it.
So you called the police, but at that point you had already decided...
We had decided not to...
You weren't going to say anything.
We were very stunned, and we felt that we would go to jail, obviously, and it was a selfish reason to just not want to have to go through that.
What about spending the money? You know, cars, watches, invested in businesses, the good life.
Well, it was the same life before or afterwards.
With more money?
With more money, but I didn't know what to do with the money. It got to a point where I have all this money and so much pain, I don't know what to do with it, and eventually...
I don't know, you're losing me. I would think that you would be in such grief that you wouldn't be able to buy Rolexes and invest in businesses. Explain to me, let me understand. I'm the public.
I don't think that it's understandable. I mean, people react to some traumatic event like that in different ways.
You went to your psychologist, Dr. Oziel, and told him that you had committed this crime.
It got to a point where I could no longer live. I felt that I was the worst person on earth, and it got to a point where I couldn't live with myself anymore, and I needed help. And so I went to him, and that is what the catalyst was for me getting arrested in Lyle.
You've had a lot of therapy.
6 years of intense therapy.
How are you different than the man who came in here?
I'm 6 years older. I'm a lot more mature. I came in here as an 18-year-old kid who didn't know anything about life.
What did you learn about yourself?
I learned I learned what love was about. I learned what love was about because of my grandmother, because of all my relatives who didn't say, I can't believe you did this. Instead, they said, Erik, I know who you are. You're not this type of person. You're not the type of person who could do this for no reason.
Have you had therapy, Lyle?
The same therapy, and it really works to just have someone you can communicate with that's willing to listen. All our lives, it was just sort of fending off things.
It almost sounds like prison was a good thing for you.
It was.
It was?
mean, at first, I killed my parents, and I spent 6 months out there in horrible agony because I had done this. I mean, a year before, I told my mother how much I loved her. I could not have imagined doing this even a week before to her. I adored her. And then suddenly you're arrested, and everyone can know you did it, and you can finally tell people, and it's a relief.
Lyle, you're looking at your brother like you almost never heard this before. Tell me how you felt.
You know, for me, emotionally being in prison conditions was really not, emotionally was not a shocking difference from the life we had lived, because we lived really a very stressful, fearful life. And to me, it was kind of like I felt I should be punished. And it didn't feel good, but there was a part of you that feels like
That's right.
It's better.
You get a lot of mail?
We still get a tremendous amount of mail.
Hundreds?
We've gotten hundreds, thousands over the years.
We asked your lawyers to give us a sample of some of your letters. A great many of them seem to deal with from people who have been abused themselves and relate to you. Lyle, what do you say to people who write to you?
A lot of people that have written were very, they drew a lot of strength from watching the trial and from seeing Erik and I. And I've gotten mail after the verdict, people discouraged. And I wanted to say to them to not lose hope because of this one case and this one verdict. Very unique situation here, and that this does not mean that if they go get help, people won't believe them, or people will treat them harshly, or they'll be ridiculed. I don't feel they will be.
That's not to say do what we did. Don't do what we did, but don't be afraid of getting help.
People that want to reach out to social workers for help, but are ashamed or afraid.
Do you also get love letters?
Yeah, some.
You find that strange?
It's a strange phenomenon that a lot of love letters come in from people that don't know you at all.
Do either one of you have girlfriends? Do either one of you have someone who cares particularly about you now at this point in your life?
I do. I
You
have
do?
someone who I love very much and is a saint to put up with everything that comes with this.
Can you tell us who she is?
Yeah, her name is Anna Erickson, and I hope that we can get married. Even though it's a very limited relationship because of where we are, the exchange of love and sharing, it keeps you in touch with yourself and softer, and you know, otherwise you can become very hard and cold in here.
Is this someone you knew before prison?
No.
This is someone who began to write to you and meet you?
She wrote me many years ago, but and I've come to know her well, but just someone that I met through the mail.
And she wants to marry you?
And she does.
Eric?
No, not at the moment.
You're not going to meet a lot in prison, Eric.
No, I probably won't. It's hard. Lyle's more able to have that type of relationship.
Eric, you know that the prosecutor brought up the fact that you might have been a homosexual and that this might have caused some of the fury on your father's part.
Yes, he did.
I didn't hear about girlfriends.
They were there.
I guess what I just have to say to you is, are you gay?
No. No, the prosecutor brought that up because I was sexually molested, and he felt in his own thinking that if I was sodomized by my father, that I must have enjoyed it, and therefore I must be gay, and the people that are gay out there must be sexually molested, or they wouldn't be, is what he felt. And it was upsetting to hear, but I'm not gay, but a lot of gay people write and feel connected to me.
A problem at the trial was the gender bias, that because we were dealing with males and in an incest family, that there's sort of perceptions that, well, maybe it was something that he wanted, something that he allowed to happen, that he shouldn't be allowed to feel afraid because he's a male. I really felt that people might have seen this case very differently if it were a sister that I was protecting or that was involved in this and not a brother.
You know this whole business of abuse excuse, that you were abused by your parents, sexually abused, emotionally abused by this tough, unyielding father. But there are lots of people who are abused sexually in other ways and they don't kill their parents. And you've been ridiculed for this abuse excuse. What do you say about it?
Abuse excuse is a word that Alan Dershowitz made up, not knowing anything about the case. To simplify it to its simplest degree, if a person is raped, man or woman, and she kills the man who raped her, is it an excuse that the reason she killed him is because she was raped? Of course not. I certainly never felt that what I did was justified or right. It was just a question of how wrong was it.
That was a big misperception about this case, that it was about justification or excuse. And my brother and I essentially pled guilty. That was very hard for me to hear the ridicule about that, because I really felt that Erik and I, And we could have gone to trial like most people and just sort of, we weren't there, it wasn't us, and had that trial.
What do you mean, we could have gone to trial, we weren't there?
Well, you could go to trial and just say that I was, you know, chipping golf balls at the time and I wasn't there. And Erik and I went to trial and said, we did this.
There were tapes.
Tapes became admissible because we said we did it. Lyle and I fought because he felt that telling the world that Dad was a sexual torturer was killing Dad twice, and he did not want to kill Dad twice. And he fought, and he said, I don't want to go up there, I'm not going to take the stand, I'm not going to do it. And then when he did, there was a great outpouring, but there was also people laughing at him, and it was strange.
Erik, you were able to tell your psychologist that you had killed your parents, but you were not able to tell your psychologist that your father had abused you?
Unless you've been molested, you can't realize how hard it is to tell.
Because of shame?
Because of shame.
The story continues now, the scene being set for murder. Describe your relationship with your father. What words come into your mind?
Brutal. Painful. Torturous. And yet I thought that he was the most powerful and brilliant person I had ever met.
I was his firstborn son. That was very important to him. And my bond with him was, I thought, strong because we had been through so much together. But it was difficult to see the things that were going on. And
things that were going on, that is, when you learned that he was sexually molesting your brother?
He had sexually molested me before I was a teenager. And it was a much different experience than Erik's.
Because you were little?
Because I was little, I guess.
You know, there are some questions that everybody asks, like, why didn't you run away?
I wish that I could have. I tried to run away when I was 12, and my father found me. He caught me and said, if you ever run away, I will kill you, I will find you, and I will kill you.
Suppose you left and you, I don't know what, became a waiter and moved away. You still thought he'd find you?
He would find me and probably kill me. I thought for certain he would kill me.
You still think that?
Oh, absolutely.
Did you love your mother or like your mother?
I loved my mother and I tried to help her. My mother was a person in a lot of pain, and she was alcoholic and she was suicidal.
Did she know about the abuse, the sexual abuse?
She knew.
And didn't do anything?
She knew, and it doesn't seem that she did anything.
Do you still think about the night of the murder?
Every day.
You both do? Tell me as clearly as you can why you murdered your parents that night.
First thing that comes to mind is terror. I was so afraid. A few days before, I had said to myself, I am never going to let my father touch me again. After I told Lyle that it had been continuing on, I said to myself, I'm never going to let him touch me again. And just before the shootings, my dad told me to get to my room and that he would be there in a minute, and he was going to come up and there was going to be sex, and it was like an explosion in my mind.
But you'd bought the guns. It wasn't something that just happened that moment. You'd thought about it.
No.
You bought the guns in advance. They just weren't in the house.
Yes, we bought the guns in advance.
So this didn't just happen that moment.
We bought the guns. There was a series of confrontations and blow-ups in the house. My dad, when it first was revealed that I had told Lyle about the secret, my dad said to Lyle, you're going to tell everyone, and I'm not going to let that happen.
Take me through your mind, Lyle.
I cannot separate and say this is why this happened. My father was threatening us, and so there was fear, but there was great, there was anger on my part, and my mother was aware of and had allied herself with my father, and there was a great deal of confusion. This happened all in just 3 days, and I wish I'd give anything to just turn back that one page of my life.
The other big question. You killed your father, who was molesting you. Why did you kill your mother?
On Thursday night before, in one of the explosions, I was running downstairs and I was crying. And my mother was on the couch and she had been drinking. And she said, "What's wrong with you?" And I said, "Nothing, nothing, you wouldn't understand." And she said, "Oh, I understand. What do you think, I'm stupid?" And she told me that she knew, that she had known all my life what my father was doing. And it was like I didn't even know who she was anymore. And I just saw Dad and Mom as the same person at that point. I saw them as a single person.
And really the first time that this secret about what was happening with Dad and Erik was discussed openly in the family in a very angry way. I don't know about Erik, but I completely lost control myself. And in that time, I didn't separate. I knew my mother and my father. It was just adrenaline and fear and anger. I
lost control.
There is no explanation.
But you had,
we don't offer one.
You had thought about this earlier because you had bought the gun several days before.
We knew that this could end, a violent confrontation could occur because my father had threatened my life.
You still think your father would have killed you for revealing the secret? You both still feel that?
There's no question.
Really?
I still believe that. I don't believe that he was in the process of killing us that moment, that evening.
Yeah.
But and I don't think that it might seem, because there are so few cases that come to the public's attention like this, that this has never occurred ever before in the country. And in fact, there are over 200 parricides a year that involve incest families. And so, I felt it completely then, and now I believe that, but I would not shoot my parents now, no matter what.
How now would you have resolved it? Now, almost 7 years later? What do you think you should have done?
I would have never told. I got Lyle into this. I went to him and I said, "Lyle, I can't live anymore with what's going on," and got him involved. He was way to go. They had bought him a condominium. He was going to Princeton. He had all the money.
So it's your fault for telling your brother?
It's my fault. And I got him involved and said, "I need your help." And 5 days later, my parents were dead.
So it's your fault?
That's completely my fault.
He was suicidal at the time, and it was just a last thing to reach out. And obviously who was going to reach out to. And I decided to confront my father rather than just sort of not say anything and just have Erik and I leave, which if I could go back, that's what I would do. I would just say, "Erik's old enough now, he wants to leave."
Have you forgiven yourself?
I don't think it's possible.
Lyle, are you at any kind of peace?
More so than maybe Erik, because at this point, for some reason, well before the verdict, I was resigned to bad things. And I have, I think, found a place where I can look forward and try to have hope and share myself more with people. And
Hope of what?
Hope of living a life that I can be more proud of.
How
And
in prison?
you're confined, but there must be, even just in writing, people that need help.
If you can help them and convince a single person that has been through our situation that the last thing in the world they should do is act out violently, then you find meaning in your life.
If you could say something to your mother and your father, I'm sure you have in your own minds, what would you say?
I am so sorry. I forgive them completely for anything they have done to us. If I had one wish, it would be able to have one conversation with them or to change places with them.
I hope someday that I can be with them and have some sort of conversation about what happened. It is one of the awful things is that I can't we couldn't communicate that weekend, and I can't. And just that I love them, and that I believe, despite everything that happened, that they really loved us, and that things just went awry.
Our interview is over. Deputies now arrive to take Erik and Lyle Menendez back to the cell blocks. They were handcuffed and chained for the long walk back. Their legs had been shackled throughout the interview. This had been one of their infrequent opportunities to see one another in jail. The guards would now take each of them to their separate cells and to the certainty of the rest of their lives in prison.
But they shot their parents because they said their father abused them.
And there was going to be sex, and it was like an explosion in my mind.
Barbara Walters asks the killer questions.
Did you think of suicide? Do you still think about the night of the murder? Did you think that your father would kill you?
And talks to the woman who married Erik behind bars.
Have you ever had sex with Erik?
Now, she shares the shocking letter the jury never saw that could have changed everything.
Every night I stay up thinking he might come in.
Plus, Erik's lawyer explains how the brothers could go free.
How strong do you think your case is?
The case is very strong.
The real story of an American scandal.
For many years, I've had a very unusual pen pal. Our correspondence started when he was young. Now he is in his 40s. He is handsome, articulate, soft-spoken. He writes me from prison because he and his brother murdered their parents. My pen pal is Erik Menendez. The murder took place on August 20th, 1989, in the Beverly Hills mansion that Erik and his older brother Lyle lived in with their parents, Jose and Kitty Menendez. Jose and Kitty had been eating ice cream and watching TV in the den when Erik, 18, and Lyle, 21, came into the room firing shotguns. Erik and Lyle told the story this way during their trial in 1993.
I was just firing as I went into the room. I just started firing.
In what direction?
In front of me.
What was in front of you?
My parents.
And I remember firing directly at him.
You reloaded? Said yes.
Yes.
And what did you do after you reloaded?
I ran around and shot my mom.
Right before the murders, the brothers said they had exposed a terrible family secret. Jose had been abusing them for years. Their mother, Kitty, had known all about it.
My dad had been molesting me. I just wanted to stop him.
Jose Menendez's life had gone from rags to riches to murder. He had worked his way up from Cuban immigrant, dishwasher, to wealthy entertainment executive. He had married a pretty blonde. He had fiercely pushed his sons to be the best. Lyle went to Princeton. Erik played competitive tennis. It was a huge story. It was as glitzy, lurid, and improbable as a soap opera. It was the first time you could watch an entire trial on television.
We are continuing with the best of the Menendez trial.
Does that contradict that evidence?
It not only launched careers,
She was in Dr. Oziel.
it launched a cable network, Court TV. The story had everything. There was Jose and Kitty's lavish lifestyle before the murder, and Erik and Lyle's lavish spending spree after the murder. A Porsche and Rolex for Lyle, a $60,000 a year tennis coach for Erik. There was the brothers' Beverly Hills psychiatrist, Dr. Oziel, to whom they confessed the murders, and Oziel's mistress, Judalon Smith, who overheard the confession.
If you do this, I swear to you, Julian, you'll be killed. Not by me. You'll be killed. Well,
if you
the boys can't kill me because they don't know who I am.
If you turned them in, I absolutely would tell them that you turned them in. I'm going to let them kill me because you decided to do something crazy?
There was defense attorney Leslie Abramson's vigorous way of talking about sexual abuse using thumbtacks.
Was to stick tacks like this.
And the Armani suits the brothers wore to their arraignment, their general air of entitled self-confidence, Erik's confession to his best friend, and the wiretap his best friend wore to try to trap him. 2 full trials and millions of dollars in legal fees. When the dust settled in 1996, 2 young men were sentenced to life in prison without parole. Did they belong there, or was it a miscarriage of justice? Were they monsters or victims of abuse? I interviewed them shortly after they were convicted. They had been in county jail for 6 years since their arrest in 1990. What went through your minds when you heard that verdict? First-degree murder, guilty.
First, I wasn't sure that I could do it. I realized that I would never have a possibility even for parole. And I wasn't sure that I could go on.
Did you think of suicide?
Yes, I thought of suicide, and the reason that I didn't is because of what it would do to Lyle.
Their biggest concern was whether they would be separated and sent to different prisons. It's important to you to stay together when you get moved to the state prison?
Very important.
We're not put in the same prison. There's a good probability I will never see him again.
What do you see yourself doing in prison when you look down that endless void?
That's one of the things that I first thought about. What can I do? And I learned that there are 2 things that are important to me, and that's one, to find meaning in life, and the other is love. I'm not really sure that I'm going to be able to have intimate love. I'll have the love of my family and friends, but I'd like to do something meaningful. I'd like to, and that means helping people.
Do you still think about the night of the murder?
Every day.
You both do? Tell me as clearly as you can why you murdered your parents that night.
I was so afraid. A few days before, I had said to myself, I am never going to let my father touch me again. After I told Lyle that it had been continuing on, I said to myself, I'm never going to let him touch me again. And just before the shootings, my dad told me to get to my room and that he would be there in a minute, and he was going to come up and there was going to be sex, and it was like an explosion in my mind. No, no. And Lyle said to my mother, are you going to let this happen? And she said to him, you ruined this family. And all I think about is the explosion in my mind, the pain, the rage, the fear.
But you'd bought the guns. It wasn't something that just happened that moment. You'd thought about it.
Yes, my dad, when it first was revealed that I had told Lyle about the secret, my dad said to Lyle, you're going to tell everyone, and I'm not going to let that happen. And that's when we bought the guns, because we didn't know what was going to happen.
And really the first time that this secret about what was happening with Dad and Erik was discussed openly in the family in a very angry way. And
within minutes of the shootings, it was the first time it was ever discussed openly.
Do you feel remorse?
Tremendous remorse. And I think
there's tremendous pain. I mean, from the second that I got back to the house after the shootings, I saw what happened and I said, this is wrong.
The 2 brothers had received thousands of letters from supporters and abuse victims and from women. Do you also get love letters?
Yeah,
Do you find that strange?
It's a strange phenomenon that a lot of love letters come in from people that don't know you at all.
Do either one of you have girlfriends?
I do. I have someone who I love very much. The exchange of love and sharing, it keeps you in touch with yourself and softer. And you know, otherwise you can become very hard and cold in here.
Erik?
No, not at the moment.
In fact, there was a woman who was writing to him at the time. Her name was Tammy Sackerman. She was married and living in a small Minnesota town. she would become Erik's wife.
Why on earth would you change your whole life for Erik Menendez?
He's the most sensitive, kind. I mean, he's always there for me.
And later, the letter the public never saw that could have changed everything. On the night of August 20th, 1989, 16 shotgun blasts rang out in Beverly Hills. Lyle and Erik Menendez had just killed their parents, but no one called the police. You don't get a lot of murders in Beverly Hills. Lyle and Erik had to call 911 themselves, pretending they had just walked into the house to find their parents dead.
Don't kill my parents. Pardon me? Were they shot? Yes. They were shot? Yes.
The police arrived within minutes and videotaped the crime scene. Inside the mansion, with its expensively tiled vestibule, things looked eerily undisturbed at first. It was only when they entered the family room, where Jose and Kitty had been watching TV, that the violence could be seen. Kitty and Jose lay inches away from each other. Jose Menendez had been sitting in a corner of the sofa. He had been shot 6 times. Kitty Menendez lay between the coffee table and the couch. She had been trying to crawl away. Kitty had been hit 10 times. She was killed by a final shot into her eye. Erik and Lyle Menendez were arrested 6 months later. They spent 4 years in county jail fighting legal issues. On July 20th, 1993, they went on trial. The public watched avidly. The trial was a national drama.
It becomes, in many ways, how you react to Erik and Lyle's testimony. Do you believe them or not? What gives these stories power is that you don't know. So you keep looking and looking again and looking again.
The prosecution said they had killed out of greed.
Did you and your brother kill your mother and father?
Yes.
Did you kill them for money?
Lyle and Erik said they had shot their parents because their father had threatened to kill them to cover up the sexual abuse. The trial hinged on whether the jurors believed that the brothers had actually been abused.
Continued to lie.
The prosecution questioned their credibility. Jose Menendez had a famous motto: lie, cheat, steal, but win.
You learned to lie as a child, didn't you?
Well, let's say I did.
And you almost didn't get caught in this case. Isn't that fair to say? In other words...
Almost didn't get caught.
Well,
I don't...
the murders occurred on August the 20th, and you weren't arrested until March.
Right.
You almost got away with it, didn't you?
Yeah, you characterize it that way, and you think it's funny, but my brother and my life was very miserable for 6 months before we got arrested. And obviously wasn't better after we got arrested, and isn't good now, and it never really has been great. You know, in some ways, getting arrested for my brother in some ways was a relief, and the changes that have happened are a relief. And I don't know what's going to happen at the end of this case, and we may go off to prison very likely, but you know, some good things have come from it.
He was abusive.
In their first trial, a parade of witnesses testified that although they hadn't seen sexual abuse, there was evidence to support the claim that Jose Menendez had abused his sons.
He had been sexually molested by his father, and he was very ashamed about that and conflicted.
But the most important testimony came from the brothers themselves, particularly Lyle's wrenchingly vivid description of abuse.
And between the ages of 6 and 8, did your father have sexual contact with you?
Yes.
And how did it start?
Just started with, after sports practices, he would massage me, and we would have these talks, and he would show me, and he would fondle me, and he would ask me to do the same with him, and I would touch him, and we would undress.
And how often would this happen?
Like 2 or 3 times a week.
And how did it change?
Just became more involved.
What do you mean, more involved?
We would be in the bathroom, and he would put me on my knees, and he would guide me, all my movements, and I would have oral sex with him.
Did you want to do this? At some point, did he do some other things to you?
He used objects.
What kind of objects?
A toothbrush.
And what would he do with the toothbrush?
Well, in the bedroom, we'd have what we called object sessions. And just slide my pants down or take my pants off.
And did he try to anally penetrate you with something else?
He did.
And what was it?
He raped me.
Did you ask him not to?
Yes.
How did you ask him not to?
I just told him, I don't. I just told him that I didn't want to do this, and that it hurt me. And he said that he didn't mean to hurt me, and he loved me.
And there was something the jury did not know about. It was given to me recently by a Menendez relative. It was a potential bombshell. A letter 15-year-old Erik had written to his cousin Andy about his father. It's still happening, Andy, but it's worse for me now. I can't explain it. He is so overweight. I can't stand to see him. I never know when it's going to happen, and it's driving me crazy. Every night I stay up thinking he might come in. I need to put it out of my mind. I know what you said before, but I am afraid. The judge said the letter was not necessarily evidence of sexual abuse and ruled it inadmissible. Most of the jurors believed the brothers and acquitted them. The others said they were guilty of second-degree murder.
The court declares a mistrial, and that completes this hearing.
The jurors have told the jury they are unable to reach a verdict, hopelessly deadlocked.
In their second trial, they had the same judge, Stanley Weisberg. But this time, the judge banned TV cameras.
The interesting thing about the Menendez's second trial, that retrial, they were tried just a few days after O.J. was found not guilty.
The acquittal of O.J. Simpson produced tremendous controversy.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of the crime of murder.
It, too, was a media circus, which put pressure on the prosecutor and judge in the second Menendez trial.
For anyone to say that what takes place in the courtroom blocks out what is going on outside is absurd. I've covered these trials. When you open those double doors leaving a courtroom and you see the media, when there are hotels and bars around the courthouse where people are going to talk about this trial, no human, judge, jury, prosecutor, defense attorney, can be immune to this.
In the second trial, Judge Weisberg excluded most of the testimony about abuse, except from the brothers themselves.
The judge in the second trial gutted the defense.
Chris Pixley is Erik's current lawyer. He says that the unadmitted testimony about abuse was crucial.
Erik and Lyle were forced to carry the entire defense on their backs, and jurors are understandably concerned about the veracity of a criminal defendant whose life is on the line, telling them the truth when they sit in the witness chair.
Very different second trial.
Night and day. Again, the brothers really were forced to carry the second trial.
In fact, Erik carried the entire case. Only he not Lyle, testified at the second trial.
The second trial, Erik, you took the stand, and you, Lyle, did not testify. Why not?
We had been through so much at that point, emotionally, unless it was incredibly necessary. I did not want to go through it again.
So you just decided that Erik could do it, but you couldn't do it?
No, it would have been helpful.
It was a decision that Lyle, myself, talked, and I didn't feel that there was a reason to. Lyle.
But Erik, you're the stronger one, is what you're saying. You could take the stand, but your older brother couldn't? I mean, it doesn't make a... Really?
Things don't make a lot of sense emotionally, but it's true. Lyle had much more trouble saying bad things and talking about all the nightmares of our childhood about my father than I did. It was the wrong decision. He should have, and if we could go back, he would take the stand.
It's tougher.
I don't know if I could go back, I would take the stand.
Really?
I don't know that I would.
Another blow to the defense was the district attorney's decision to only charge them with first-degree murder and to exclude lesser charges like manslaughter.
There will be no plea bargaining in this case. I have every intention of going forward with the death penalty, yes.
Biggest problem these boys had in that second trial, manslaughter was off the table. I mean, that's everything to this case. Because without manslaughter, it's hard to bump them down to something lesser. Instead, it was all or nothing. And without having those witnesses in the courtroom who could talk about their perception on whether they were abused and their perception of what happened in the relationship between the parents and the sons, their case was dead in the water.
Erik and Lyle were convicted of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. They were sentenced to life in prison without parole and were sent to 2 different prisons where they might never see each other again. When we return, Erik's letters to me, how prison has changed him. He wrote, "Prison is a jungle for people to make of themselves what they wish." Erik and Lyle Menendez committed a crime that is almost unimaginable. When I interviewed them in 1996, I wondered how they lived with what they had done. Erik, you have said that you sometimes hear your father's voice in jail.
When I first was arrested, I would hear it.
Saying what?
I hate you, I'm gonna get you. I couldn't believe that he was dead, and a part of me still felt he was alive.
I still, too, have many dreams about my parents.
What do you dream? Are they alive, or do you dream about the murders?
I find myself back in my childhood and struggling, because I struggle a lot with whether they forgive us.
What'd you decide?
And in my dreams, it's a struggle with them still, I think.
Have you forgiven yourself?
I don't think it's possible.
Do you dream about your parents?
The dreams are happy. I had a dream once that was my mother being shot, having been shot, hugging me, and me hugging her. And I woke up crying, and I woke up and I said, I'm alive. I'm back in the nightmare. I want to go back. About my father, I still have the dreams of the sex or the fear, him chasing me.
Do you think you're evil?
Oh no, I'm the opposite of evil. He's not an evil person, and I'm not an evil person. It was an act that was awful, and was evil, but it's not evil.
Well, let me say it. There are people, a great number of people, who think that you two are spoiled brats, that you are evil, that you are monsters. What do you say to them?
I don't know that there's anything I can say to them. That's not who I am, but I can't defend that.
Yeah, I feel that I would be surprised if anybody that was present at that trial and saw the whole thing rather than snippets on the news would feel that.
A jury found you both guilty.
Right, but they found us guilty of murder based on the instructions. You aren't guilty because they found you spoiled.
Or evil.
Or evil.
Just a normal I'm just a normal kid.
Oh, Erik, you're a normal kid who killed your parents.
Yeah, I know.
And you still say you're a normal kid?
Well, I didn't have normal experiences, but I am. I did that, and there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about what happened and wish that I could take that moment back or change what happened.
You know, there are some questions that everybody asks, like, why didn't you run away?
And I wish that I could have. I tried to run away when I was 12, and my father found me. He caught me and said, if you ever run away, I will kill you, I will find you, and I will kill you. And that's how my dad did things in his life. He controlled through fear. And you grow up in this world, and you live in this bubble, and you believe these things.
It's very difficult to understand the emotion and the fear and the conflict that is building over the years to something like this.
Suppose you left and you moved away. You still thought he'd find you?
He would find me and probably kill me. I thought for certain he would kill me.
You still think that?
Oh, absolutely.
After I interviewed him in 1996, Erik Menendez began writing to me. He wrote a great deal about prison life, and he showed a sensitive and compassionate side that I think would have surprised many people. It was a world very different from the privileged one he had grown up in. He wrote, "Prison is a jungle for people to make of themselves what they wish." He told me about his experience with brutality and wrote, "I was beaten by an officer several years ago." He also wrote me about the woman he had married. He said, "She is as classy, as genuine, and as courageous as can be. She is indeed my heart, my soul." When we return, the strange courtship of Erik Menendez and his wife, Tammy. Could you kiss each other? Why would a lovely woman want to marry a notorious killer? In other words, what explains Tammy Menendez, the wife of Erik Menendez? When I interviewed her in 2002, it was the first time she had ever spoken publicly. She was speaking on camera, she said, because she wanted the world to know who her husband, Erik, really was. I tried to be tactful. You realize, with all due respect, that a lot of people think you're nuts?
Oh, yes. I've heard it before many times.
If I just say to you, why, what do you say?
My answer to that is I fell in love with him unexpectedly.
To say there have been obstacles along the way would be an understatement. Some of her friends dropped her. Her employer at her job, working with animals, fired her. But it didn't keep her away from Erik Menendez. Nancy Saslow made a documentary film about Tammy called Mrs. Menendez and has remained in touch with her. What was it about Erik that attracted Tammy?
He was smart. He was funny. He was kind.
Tammy first saw him on court TV during the trial and was drawn to him by sympathy. What were your thoughts as you watched?
I could understand what he went through, and my heart went out to him.
Had you ever written to anyone before who was on trial or in prison?
Never.
Never.
I was going to write him one letter, tell him that I supported him, and if he wrote back, he wrote back. If he didn't, then I would never write again.
Erik was then 23. Tammy was 10 years older, married, and living in a small town in northern Minnesota, pursuing a career training and showing dogs. Did your husband know that you were writing to Erik?
Yes.
Did he mind?
No.
Was he jealous?
No.
What did he think?
He thought it was kind of cool. He read the letters, and because there was nothing in there that was, we were just friends.
Many people thought that Erik and Lyle Menendez were two bratty, rich, spoiled kids who murdered their parents for the money. Did you think that?
Not at all. There was no way that they did it for the money. I never thought that.
You believe that Erik was sexually molested by his father?
Definitely. I know that because of the way he is and because of the way I talk to him about it, and there's definitely sexual abuse.
Nancy Saslow thinks that Tammy's belief that Erik was victimized is central to their relationship.
And I think it's also the reason that she is able to compartmentalize, if you will, what he did. I think if you had to put it into a sentence, that Tammy Menendez believes that Erik is a good man who did a bad thing.
After Erik was convicted in the second trial, Tammy stopped writing for a while because of a crisis in her own life. Her husband of 9 years had died, leaving her alone to raise her baby daughter. Your husband died?
Yes.
And you turned to Erik for support. And did
Yes.
you get it from Erik?
Yes. I trusted Erik.
Why and how did you trust him when you hadn't even met him?
There was just something about him. Maybe it was because he was incarcerated, and I knew that he just was my safety place. He was very safe for me.
Were you surprised that you were feeling this way?
Yes, I was surprised and scared.
Why scared?
Because I did not want to get emotionally attached, to him.
And it was happening.
It was happening, and I was trying to keep my distance, and, it was not working out that way.
You know that one of the things that psychologists say is common to women who begin relationships with men in prison is that they have been mistreated by men in their lives. Do you fall into that category?
I think that in my marriage I was emotionally starved.
And you were never abused?
Not physically. Mentally, not physically. He was just not there for me at all.
Several months after her husband died, Tammy began going out on dates. Did you write to Erik about the men you were dating?
Yes. He would say, well, how much do you like this guy? So, I could tell there was a tinge of jealousy.
At one point, you were dating a doctor.
Yes.
And to most people, that would be desirable.
Yes.
You prefer a man serving a life sentence to a doctor?
Yes. Erik gives me so much emotional support, and that's what I need. I'm very independent, so I can get by on my own, and I don't really want somebody not there for me emotionally. I had that, and I don't want to go back.
4 years after she began writing to Erik, Tammy visited him in prison for the first time.
The prison situation was very scary.
You'd never been in a prison?
Never been in a prison, never seen a prison.
Did Erik know what you looked like at this point?
No.
The couple met in a large, bleak visitor's hall. Tammy says you can see how nervous she was in this photograph taken that day at the prison. What did you think?
I was just thinking, I'm really attracted to this person, and it's not a good thing because he's incarcerated, and it was quite intense, and I know myself, and I tend to follow my heart, so I knew I was in trouble. And we visited again, and things just kept getting more intense.
So Tammy and her daughter left Minnesota and moved across the country to California, where she would be close enough to visit Erik in prison. You come here alone, you're a pretty woman, you leave Minnesota, you had other men that you could have married. Why on earth would you change your whole life for Erik Menendez?
He's the most sensitive, kind, he's always there for me. He worries, I never had that before.
These are things that he's drawn.
These are things that he's drawn. There's, when we first met, he would count the days, and then
he did all this artwork.
He did the artwork, and 300 days.
This is 300, so every day you get a letter like this.
Yes.
Erik still creates handmade cards and drawings for special occasions. He writes to Tammy frequently, sometimes once or twice a day. They are long letters, often filled with poetry. Do you think that Tammy and Erik will stay married?
I think they will stay married. She found herself in a relationship with Erik Menendez where she was everything. I believe that there's something in that is not only potentially intoxicating, but the pure definition of what it's like to feel important and to feel loved.
In June of 1999, 5 years after Tammy sent her first letter, they were married on visiting day at the prison. Erik's grandmother came, along with 2 aunts, one from each side of his family. The prison makes no exception for weddings. There were no flowers or presents. Their chapel, a tiny cinder block conference room. Do you have a cake?
We had Twinkies.
Twinkies that you could buy in the
vending machine.
In the vending machine.
Yeah, we improvised.
Could you kiss each other?
Just, they did allow us to kiss each other after the wedding, so that was nice.
Forgive me if I'm too personal.
No, that's
but,
okay.
You know, but have you ever had sex with Erik? When I spoke to Erik and Lyle Menendez after they were convicted in 1996, they each told me that they hoped to be in a loving relationship. Considering their life sentences, it seemed hard to believe that this could happen, but it did for both of them. Lyle married Anna Erickson, a former Playboy model whom he met through correspondence in 1990. They divorced in 2001 because Lyle was writing to other women. Lyle met his next wife also through letters. In 2003, he married Rebecca Sneed, a lawyer. The two current Menendez wives have worked together on prison reform.
Prison families were getting together and speaking with legislators and trying to argue for the rights of prisoners. And that's why Becky came down. If Tammy Menendez is shy about being on camera and really doesn't want the notoriety, Becky even more so.
In 2000, Tammy moved again to be even closer to Erik. She bought a house just a few miles from the prison. She visited Erik 4 days a week, the maximum allowed. So you're staying 4 or 5 hours?
Yes.
That's a long time to talk.
And there's never a dull moment. I never get bored.
Because of...
We have so much to talk about. We just have so much fun.
You have fun?
Yeah.
That's hard for me to imagine.
I know.
Of course, there are some limitations to the relationship. Have you ever had sex with Erik?
No.
Your marriage has never been consummated?
No.
When you see Erik, when you come into the waiting room, are you allowed to kiss him?
We can hug and kiss on the way out and hold hands during the visit. And the holding of the hands during the visit is everything.
Do you find this very frustrating? You're a young woman. Forgive me if I'm too personal.
No, that's okay.
You know, but I'm sure people, you know, I mean, you can never have this marriage consummated. You're not allowed to have conjugal visits.
It's not a problem for me. It's just not a problem for me at all. I've never had a desire to stray, or it's just not a problem for me at all.
As long as you have the emotional support and the affection.
Yes.
When I visited Erik with Tammy in 2002, Erik looked healthy and muscular, and the two seemed very much in love. Although state prisons don't allow TV cameras, Erik spoke with me by phone at the time.
Barbara.
Yes.
How are you?
I'm all right, Erik. How are you? A lot of people, you know, Erik, think that Tammy was crazy to marry you. I mean, you're a maximum security inmate with a life sentence. What can you possibly offer Tammy?
I can't offer her most of the things that another husband can in terms of being with her physically and being able to hold her in that sense. What I can offer her is unconditional and complete devotion and love. She is everything to me.
I love you too.
Like many wives, Tammy believes in working on her relationship. She gave Erik the book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, and he studied it.
You learned all the lessons. And...
Oh, yeah, I underlined them. My dog heard the book. Pages started coming out. Because every time we get in an argument, I have to run back to the book.
Yeah.
What did I say? Ooh, I said that? That's what she heard?
You said something wrong. Something wrong.
Tammy is Erik's link to the outside world. Although she can't bring him things on every visit, 4 times a year, prisoners are allowed to receive supplies.
Oh, and here's your beef jerky.
Okay, teriyaki jerky.
Usually he talks to me on the phone and helps me pick out what he needs. Now, do you like the Butterfingers? You know, you can send him a watch or sweatpants or socks.
Then there was the issue of Tammy's child from her first marriage. Tammy, you have a little girl, a 6-year-old.
Yes.
Who lives with you.
Yes.
Do you bring her to prison?
She does come and visit Erik. She does, yes.
It's one of the delights of my life. I get to tutor her in math and spelling and watch this little precious girl grow up.
What have you told her?
She asks why Erik is not home. And I tell her that he's not home because he did a very bad thing, and he has to stay here.
What will you tell her in a few years when she's old enough to really ask, what did he do?
I will have to tell her. I will have to tell her the truth, yes.
Today, Tammy lives in San Diego, near where Erik is currently imprisoned. They are still married. She sees him regularly, and they talk nearly every day. When I interviewed Erik Menendez, he said that his worst fear was that he would never be able to see his brother again. They are each at prison in California, but different prisons. They can write to each other, but have not talked nor seen each other since 1996.
And then these are all transcripts.
For years, Tammy and Erik have appealed his case. Tammy used her own resources until she ran out of money. Erik's lawyer, Chris Pixley, continued working pro bono. It seemed hopeless. Then there was a change in California law. And now there is a chance that Erik and Lyle Menendez might go free. The law gives defendants who are not allowed to present family and expert testimony of abuse the right to appeal their cases. In the second trial, evidence of abuse was not presented. Why not?
The judge's reasoning was that Erik and Lyle were essentially presenting a battered woman's syndrome defense, and the prosecuting attorney pointed out they're not women. The judge agreed and said, that's it.
You mean it was only because they were not female that they couldn't present evidence?
Because of their gender, the decision was made that they not be allowed to present all of these witnesses.
When will this be decided?
We have to file the appeal. We have to argue the appeal, and if we're successful, and we do so before 2020, then they could be given the right of a retrial.
This is the last opportunity.
It's the last gasp.
Today, Lyle is serving time in Mule Creek State Prison in Ione, California. Erik is 500 miles away in the R.J. Donovan facility in San Diego, working in hospice care, helping sick and dying inmates. Erik wrote me a letter recently. In it, he talks about his parents and how he lives with his crime. He wrote, I reflect almost daily on my life prior to prison. To this day, I think of my family members, and most tragically, my parents, with a sorrow and regret that no words can convey. Everything else I could ever say about my life now or then matters little in importance when compared to that. As Erik himself says, no matter what happens in the future, he and his brother will never escape their past. For Investigation Discovery, I'm Barbara Walters.